So this week we are learning about the first battle. Yeah. This is the first battle, the first army battle that in Jewish history that Jewish people had to fight against their enemies. So even though we had the other battles from Abraham with the 4 against the 5 kings, it was not really Avram's battle. Avram gets involved because his nephew is in captivity, so he gets involved. This is the first story where we have actual battle between the Jewish people and members of other nations who are living and cohabiting in the land of Israel. A question of ownership. And this story in this week's Parsha puts in front of us the question, the ethical question, regarding what is considered an enemy, who are we fighting against, and do we only target our enemy? What's about all the civilians who are part of the enemy space? The Parsha this week is interesting that most of the stories that we deal in this week's Parsha is about interacting with a Jewish enemy. It begins with the story of Yaakov having to confront Esav, his brother, who is coming with 400 men against him. And Yaakov prepares himself with a gift for a battle. He prepares himself with prayers. He's being ready to combat or somehow turn this around for himself between him and his brother, Esav, who is out to kill him. That's the first bulk of the beginning of the Parsha. And then when Yaakov finally meets with Esav and there is this moment of love and they hug and kiss each other, the next story is the story of Dinah. The story of Dinah is the story of Dinah, the daughter of Yaakov, the daughter of Leah. And Dinah was kidnapped by the mayor of the city of Shechem. His name is Hamor. Hamor means a donkey in Hebrew, but this was his name, Hamor. And Hamor had a son, Shechem, who goes and he kidnaps the girl. Dinah went out of her house. She went to make some friends. She came to a strange land and she wanted to make up some local friends, meet some locals. And this is when Shechem goes and he kidnaps her and he ends up raping her multiple times. And as the story goes, Hamor and Shechem come to Yaakov and his family wanting to smoothen out the incident by offering marriage, that basically Shechem should marry Dinah. And as part of this marriage, they are asking for a relationship and peace negotiations. So we should become as one family and we should marry each other's daughters and do business together. And they're offering Yaakov a proposition, how we can smooth out the incident. Yaakov has 2 sons, Shimon and Levi. According to the Medrash, that was the day of their bar mitzvah. One of them at least. The other one was probably already bar mitzvah. They were both at the age of 13 years old. And by the way, if you have not heard this before, the source in the Torah that a bar mitzvah for a boy is at the age of 13 is from the story of Dinah. Because the Torah calls Shimon and Levi Ish. Ish means a man. Says the Medrash, this is the day that one of them became a man. This was the day, the year of their bar mitzvah. They became a man. So today we're going to learn about the bar mitzvah celebration of Shimon and Levi. What was their bar mitzvah speech? What are they teaching us? The first bar mitzvah in Jewish history. What do boys do at their bar mitzvah? Okay. The Shimon and Levi turn to Shechem and to Hamor, the father and the son, And they say, if you want to make peace with us, if you want to smoothen out the matter with us, if you want to be in a relationship with us, we have a proposition for you. And that is, all men need to circumcise. If all the men will be circumcising, then we could become as one family, because Abraham's grandchildren are not going to be in relationships with people who have not circumcised themselves. That was the only mitzvah that Abraham and his children had by God to go through circumcision. Obviously, they reluctantly return back to their town, and they invite the members of town, and they're offering him the proposition. They say, this is a wonderful family. It's worth to be in relationship with them. We're going to get their daughters, and they will marry ours. They are good businessmen. It's worth to be in peace with them. But we have one little problem. Every man has to circumcise himself. And you can see how powerful this leadership, this father and son war. Every single man went and circumcised himself. 3 days after this painful surgery, the entire town, the men are all in pain, laying in bed, taking narcotics, trying to ease their pain. 2 young boys, bar mitzvah boys, Shimon and Levi, without asking their father's permission or their brother's permission, took a sword in their hand, and they entered the town, and they murdered every single man who was at the age of adulthood. They spared the women, they spared the children, the cattle, the spoil. They took their sister Dinah, and they returned home with her. Yaakov sees Shimon and Levi returning, and he knew exactly what they just had done. He gets really upset with them. And he says, what did you guys do? Now the entire nation of the world, of this entire area, the Canaanites will come and they will rise against us, and they will punish us for what we just did. Yaakov is very distressed with what his 2 sons just accomplished. And the 2 boys turn to their father and they say one line. Will our sister turn into a harlot? Can our sister be treated as a prostitute? That's the final word, the final say, is what they say to their dad. Can we sit silent when our sister is being treated like this? Our sister is being kidnapped and raped? And they have the final say. Yaakov doesn't say anything else to them. Now, what happens after that? God Almighty appears to Yaakov and he says, time for you to move on from this place, and I want you to come visit me in the holy mountain in Jerusalem, in Bethel. Take your kids, take your family, and come up to Bethel. You owe me an offering. Remember, when you travel down to Mesopotamia, when you travel down to Haran, you told me, you made a promise when you erected the stone that if God saves you from all evil, you're going to come back and you're going to bring an offering. I'm waiting for your offering. God blesses him. God reaffirms and changes his name from Yaakov to Israel, reaffirming what the angel did. And Yaakov takes his family. He tells them, guys, anything you took from Shechem, everything is in the category of idolatry. Let's take it all off. Let's bury it. And they begin their journey to Jerusalem. The Torah tells us, as a result of what Shimon and Levi did, Vayehi chitas Elokim. There was the fear of God upon the cities where they traveled. What happened was, Shimon and Levi did such an act, such a move, that caused the entire nation that lived around Shechem, the whole Canaanite nation, was petrified, fearful, full of dread of this family. And they were able to travel, and nobody got up, and nobody even tried to touch them. They put such a fear of God on everyone as a result of their act. Now, The commentaries in this story are really grappling with what exactly was moral here, what was ethical, what was Yaakov's upsetness, what was their response to Yaakov's upsetness. And you have your opinions going to all extremes. Very interesting to study this story with the commentaries around it. One of my most fascinating learnings I did this week, learning the different commentaries on this particular incident. Now, what I took from this entire back and forth of all those commentaries is a very beautiful teaching that I just draw conclusion to myself is when it comes to violence, when it comes to hurting someone else, our sages are having a hard time with the story. Nobody takes it as black and white. Each one of the commentaries is trying to excavate and find a different direction to okay it, to figure it out, to take sides. You know, when we have to do something, when Jewish people, Torah people have to do something that takes this type of action or violence, we don't take it easy. It's not something that we are jumping to do, and we know the effects that it has on those involved, even those who are on the right side, the emotional effects that it takes on the soldiers and on the people who are on the right side of it. So it's really incredible to see how our sages in the different commentaries on the story are trying to really grapple with Shimon and Levi's action, with Yaakov's reaction. What exactly happened over here? Until Mashiach comes, Jewish people having enemies, the fight of good and bad, the powers of evil. Unfortunately, one of those things is war. One of those things is dealing with a rude and enemy that we have to eradicate, we have to fight with, we have to figure out how to live side by side with. And therefore, I find this story very relevant, extremely relevant to what we are all living through in the last couple of weeks, trying to figure out what exactly is happening over there. This is not a theoretical class today. This is not a class of like we can learn about something that happened thousands of years ago. This is a question of life and death. And we know that the first rule in every battlefield is to know our enemy, know what is his tactics. We have to know what type of weapons our enemy carries, where does he hide, and we have to learn how to identify our enemy. Okay? Our enemy has an identification. So we are more vigilant and we are more careful that certain things are not going to turn into a danger as things are evolving. The question that we are all really are hearing the Western world ringing in our ears. This is the question that the Western world is really vocalizing this question. And it's important for us to pay attention to what exactly do they want. And are we ourselves, the Jewish people, having a problem with that question? And the question came about, if you remember, on Tuesday, October 17th, I was on a plane and on the way to Argentina. And the news came through that there was a big bomb that fell in the courtyard of a hospital. And some communication from Gaza came through that there was hundreds of people who lost their lives because of Israeli shelling, and because many people are finding their shelter in the courtyard of the hospital. Right, they were there the first moment, obviously a barrage of condemnations against Israel. America, UN, everybody condemning Israel violence. We became the bad guy. A couple minutes passed and the truth came out. It was basically a missile that was fired by the Islamic Jihad from a cemetery nearby that fell in the courtyard of the hospital and was their own fire. And then we found out that not even a handful of people got hurt by that bomb. It was all a lie. It was all a made up thing, right away blaming Israel. And that story kind of like rings in this everything that happened the last couple of weeks. That story kind of like rose and brought up the question, what would have happened if we would have hurt hundreds of people in that hospital? Is it murder? Is it not okay? Is it an act that we allowed to do at a time of war? Now, we are not talking in a situation where the masses, where the people are actually covering on the terrorists. Okay? There's no more laws of war applying in situations like this. We have to be very clear about it. If people are used if people are used as shields to shield terrorists, then those people have no option, even in universal or international warfare. People who are protecting the enemy have lost their will of living, have lost their right of staying alive. Now, regarding the Jewish ethics of war, the question is, can a Jewish army just go and bomb and kill and murder people who are seemingly innocent? Here I come back to the story of Shimon and Levi, and I really want you to understand here, because this is the story, by the way. This story is the story of morality and ethics, how to deal with the enemy that is targeting. First of all, this is an enemy, a private citizen, you can say, or the son of the mayor, who is targeting and already targeted, already raped and kidnapped the daughter of Yaakov. And then we have this unproportionate, that's the word that everybody loves to use right now, unproportionate reaction of Yaakov's two sons. When you objectively analyze Yaakov's reaction, yeah, and I'm looking at the verse, it looks like clearly that Yaakov and God Almighty, who wrote the Torah, are agreeing with Shimon and Levi. That Shimon and Levi actually did do the right thing, murdering the entire, all the males in the city. Now, how do I know that? First of all, I look at Yaakov's reaction. Yaakov's reaction is only confronting them on their tactics. He's only confronting them is, why did you make them all circumcised? He doesn't condemn them for pouring out innocent blood. Number two, Yaakov is talking about the cheating. You used the mitzvah of circumcision to cause people a trap, that by them circumcising themselves, he took something really holy, a religious act, and now what's going to happen as a result of that, we're going to have a religious war between us and all the nations around. He still doesn't mention anything about why did you kill innocent people. Now, even more than that, when the story comes to an end, Shimon and Levi turn to the father and they say the final word. They say, will our sister become a prostitute? And Yaakov doesn't answer. Seemingly, Yaakov is agreeing with him. You're right. You're right. But what is the but? Not how dear you spilled blood of innocent humans. That's not a claim. He doesn't yell at them, how dear you spilled the blood of innocent people who didn't do anything against your sister. That should have been really vocalized in his yelling against them. The only thing he's complaining is you are creating an unnecessary threat by acting in zealousy. Tactically, you did something wrong. Religiously, maybe you did something wrong. And using the bris as a form of causing them to be in pain. But he somehow seemingly agrees to them. Now, what is their answer? They have an answer that is 3 words. I love their answer. I'm in my nature, I'm a little bit of religious zealot. Those of you who see my smile can't ever see that, but I'm a little bit of a religious zealot. And I love how they respond to their dad. They say, will our sister turn into a harlot? Their response to their father is, you're asking us about tactics? There's no tactics. Every tactic is okay when it comes to such an act of defiling and demoralizing our sister. The father has nothing to answer to that. They have a point. This is their sister. They are 13 years old. Their blood is boiling. Look what was done to our sister. Tactics, schmactics. No tactics. We go and we knock out their teeth and we leave them without. That was their reaction. Now, you are worried about this, that all the nations around will now rise and come to annihilate us? They say, Dad, by us acting that way, no one will start up with us. If you are worried about our security, that was the best thing to do. An improportionate reaction, and now no one dares starts up with us. As we see soon, that when they started their journey, everybody was petrified of this crazy family that you don't start up with them. I saw a beautiful teaching. This is like a side note. There's one of the commentaries on the Chumash, his name is the Kli Yakar. So he says, why did they choose to circumcise them? Why did they ask them to circumcise? So he said, once they circumcise, they're like Jews. No one wants to come rescue the Jews. It's not a joke. He says it like seriously. He says the reason why they wanted to circumcise is they wanted to separate them from all the other Canaanites. Now they're considered Jewish converts. Now the UN is not rescuing the Jews. No one is coming to rescue them now. Now the Torah admits, if you see the words, like I mentioned at the beginning of the class, that when they started traveling, the world around them was petrified of them. It seems like the Torah admits that was the right thing. That act was the act that caused a lesson for future generations to unproportionately react when someone hurts you. Now, that would all have been smooth and right, and we could have ended the class here, and we got a lesson, a beautiful lesson. But there is a problem. There's a big, big problem. In a couple of weeks, we're going to read Parshas Vayechi. This is the last Parsha in the book of Genesis. This is the Parsha where Yaakov passes away. And before he passes away, he invites his children around his bed, and each child, he gives them a blessing. He starts with Reuven. He says, Reuven, you I can't bless. And he gives him the reason why he can't bless. Then it comes to Shimon and Levi, and he says, Shimon and Levi, oi, 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 oi. You guys are terrible, terrible. I can't bless you. Your anger, oh boy, your wrath, you destroyed a whole city of people. And you almost uprooted your brother Joseph. I have to scatter you among the people. You're never going to be able to live in one place. Shimon and Levi will be scattered among the Jews. Can't keep you guys together. You read what Yaakov tells them before his passing, you suddenly realize that actually Yaakov was very upset with him. This wasn't something that ended with Yaakov's silence. As one of the commentaries say that the reason why Yaakov is silent is he saw 2 young teenagers who are outraged, and they had a point, and he didn't say anything. But really, based on what we see later on in Parshas Vayechi, Yaakov was really upset with them. So suddenly this moment in Yaakov's relationship with his son suddenly questions the whole lesson that we just gave about the Torah agreeing to it, Yaakov agreeing to it, factually it was right. What's happening over here? So first of all, I want to ask two questions because I want to lead you into a very beautiful, powerful lesson that is deeply ethical and relevant to what's going on right now. Question number one is, how could Shimon and Levi, and I'm asking you this question from a very, very pure and innocent place. How did Shimon and Levi found the right to massacre an entire city because of the sin of one guy? Where was the rights for it? Okay, so Shechem raped your sister. Go into the city, take Shechem, hang him, and that's it. Why will every member of the city now become responsible for Shechem's behavior? So you have a young son of a mayor, who is a violent boy. He went and he violated your sister's innocence. He raped her. He abducted her. Take the boy, kill him, and that's it. Where did it come, this act of going and murdering every man in the town? Was it even right? That's number one. Number two, I want to remind you who we're talking about. We're talking about Shimon and Levi. Shimon and Levi are tzaddikim. Shimon and Levi are one of the 12 holy tribes. Their name was written on the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. They carried a holiness in them. This was an act of sin. So there must be, there is more to the story here, and there is more learning to do to really understand and appreciate what exactly Shimon and Levi did in Shechem. Yaakov, their father, earlier in the Parsha, the Torah says that Yaakov prepared his army to fight. If Esau comes with his 400 men, he will be ready to fight. So the verse in the Torah says Yaakov was afraid. It's interesting how many emotions, of descriptions of emotions, the Torah says. Vayira, Yaakov was afraid. Vayetzer, he felt very distressed. He had an anxiety from this, that he's going to have to fight his brother with 400 men. Says the Ramban, what was Yaakov's anxiety? Says the Ramban, because Yaakov knew that in a battlefield, you kill a lot of innocent people. And that he was not okay with. He knew that he has to kill the one who's trying to kill him. But his distress was that he's going to have to kill civilians. He's going to have to kill people who are not part of the combative, and he's going to have to do that as well. And here comes the question. How come Shimon and Levi are not concerned about what their dad was concerned in his battle against Esau? In order to understand the difference between what happens in Parshas, this week's Parsha, where Yaakov, he somehow agrees to what his son does, and later on in Parshas V'yechi, where he curses their anger, I want to open up with a teaching of Maimonides, the Rambam. The Rambam in his laws of war writes, the Bnei Noach, the Noachites, meaning to say the nations of the world, have an obligation to put courts and judges in every town and every city. And a Noachite who transgressed one of his 7 Noachite laws will be killed by sword. Then Maimonides adds, not in parentheses, he adds, and this is why the members of Shechem deserve to be murdered, because Shechem kidnapped Dinah, and the members of the town saw, knew, and didn't judge. Maimonides teaches us a new chiddush, a new idea in what does it mean to be part of an act of part of what does it mean to be part of what does it mean to be part of an atrocity? That are passive, if you are passive, if you know that something bad is happening from your community and you are not stopping it, Maimonides says that this that they didn't protest, this that they didn't put him up to judgment, this boy, they were all passive participants, and therefore they all deserved to be killed. The same punishment that he deserved, all of them deserved as well. In other words, as follows. Maimonides says it clearly. Again, this is a teaching by Maimonides. We'll see in a minute that not everybody agrees with him. But Maimonides says clearly that each one of the members of that town, because they were all considered Noachites, they were all obligated in creating a system of law and order. And they stood by and they were willing to circumcise themselves. They were willing to continue business as usual. They were willing to be participants in a form of being passive and agreeable. They were partners in the rape. They were partners in the abduction. So the same punishment he deserves, they deserve as well. Where is the source for this type of a halacha besides the story of Shechem? So one of the commentaries brings that we see earlier when God Almighty warns Avimelech about this, that he kidnapped Sarah from Abraham. God Almighty tells Avimelech the words that God says, you're going to die and all that's yours is going to die. Avimelech was the kidnapper, and God Almighty tells him, if you're not going to return Sarah to Abraham, not only you are going to die, everything that's part of your life is going to die as well. Meaning to say, everyone who is a silent, passive participant in an act of terror is a terrorist himself. And the punishment that the terrorist is to get, again, this is Maimonides' opinion, every silent, passive participant gets as well. The Ramban, that is the Rambam, Maimonides, and then there's the Ramban, Nachmanides. Nachmanides, he actually disagrees with the Rambam. And he said that only active participants deserve a punishment. Passive don't deserve. Now, his claim, what was Shimon and Levi's opinion? Shimon and Levi's opinion was that city, Shechem, was defiled. They were transgressing more laws of morality way before Dinah was abducted. And Shimon and Levi decided to create some form of martial law to go try and hang and punish that city. Yaakov was in disagreement with them completely. He believed that you can't punish an entire city who is passive, even though you know they are defiled. You can't just go and try them and kill them. And therefore, Yaakov was in disagreement with them, and he curses their anger in Parshas Vayechi later on. And the reason why he doesn't debate them and he just listens to what they are saying about their sister shouldn't be turning into a harlot, says Nachmanides, Yaakov didn't want to stir a fight between him and his children. They were at a moment of heat. He didn't want to confront them and continue dealing with them. Now, we understand, according to Nachmanides, we could understand why Yaakov is angry at them, even though he's disagreeing to what they do in the story in this week's Parsha. And later on in Vayechi, he actually lets them know exactly what he feels about it. But what I want to talk about is the Rambam. The Rambam seems pretty harsh, pretty strong. The passive participants are as punished as the one active participant because they stood silent when an atrocity happened. They should have demonstrated, they should have gotten up and do something, and they're allowing, they allow this to happen. That was considered an offense, and they deserve the same punishment. Now, I want to deviate a moment to Gaza, okay? What's happening right now in Gaza. In Gaza, it's not a situation where some people are passive and some people are active participants, okay? We have to make it really clear to us because we have to know that we are not at fault. The Jewish people who are fighting in Gaza hopefully will renew their fighting after they receive whatever captives they need to receive. We have to remember that the story of Shechem and the story of Gaza is extremely different. In Gaza, there is no such a thing, passive participant. In the year 2007, there was democratic election in Gaza, where the people of Gaza went and they elected the murderous Hamas. Hamas, in their bylaws, in their teachings, they believe, and they spoke openly, that they came to the world to annihilate the Jewish people from the river to the sea, from the Jordan to the Mediterranean. That's their mission statement. This is what they believe in. And every member of the city of Gaza voted to invite Hamas in. And ever since 2007, there was not even one post, one demonstration, one even tryout to get rid of this Hamas rulership. Now, 20 years, there was no elections. In Judea, in Samaria, in Ramallah, there was no elections. You know why there wasn't elections for the last 20 years? Because they know that if going to elections, the majority of Palestinians will vote Hamas. And this is why there was no election for the last 20 years. The problem of the West is that they rationalize what's going on in Gaza, and they judge it and they try it with Western thoughts, Western way of thinking. The facts on the ground is that we are dealing with a religious hate that is unstoppable. The entire education system in Gaza, from the age of 0, a child learns the importance of annihilating the Jewish people. They learn it, they study it, they train it, they'll teach them things about that. And the anti-Semitism of Gaza people, of Palestinians, is way more above and beyond any classic anti-Semitism that you see by bigots, if it's white supremacy or other forms of bigotry that exist in the United States. What we saw on Simchas Torah, we saw terrorists who came with maps. They knew every village, every town. How did they get maps of such details? They were invited in by the Jewish people to come work for them. They gave them work permits. This elusive peace thought brought upon this, that there was this Jewish compassion believing that we can give hope to people like this. What I would say is, the story of Gaza is very not similar to the story of Shimon and Levi in Shechem. The story of Gaza is more similar to the story of Amalek and Midian. This is two biblical enemies, Amalek and Midian. This is two biblical enemies where the Torah tells us to destroy every man, woman, and child, because those two nations are nations who educated their children from birth to hate the Jewish people. They are enemies in their hearts, in their minds, in their blood. So we have to remember that when we talk about people of Gaza and our natural Western compassion comes up, we have to remind ourselves what type of people, what type of education, what type of an upbringing, what flows in the bloodstream of an Arab child who looks so innocent on film, who looks so lovely on a TikTok video, knowing what that kid nursed with his mother's milk, what he was taught in his preschool, what is those education books. The Maharal, the Yehuda Levi from Prague, asks a question. He says, after all, the people of Shechem were afraid of their leader. They had a very powerful leader. Hamor was probably a very powerful leader. His son Shechem was the prince, also a powerful leader. And he asks a question. He says, probably they were all afraid of him. They were all dominated by that fear of the great leader. So it's not their fault. And the Maharal answers a very powerful answer. He says, Shechem, Hamor, and the people of Shechem were not private citizens. Don't look at the story as a private citizen went and he abducted a private citizen's daughter, and one tried to hurt the other one, and if something happened between the wild son of the leader and the daughter of the other leader. He says, no. He says that story is a nation against a nation. Shechem is the nation of Shechem. Dinah was the nation of the house of Yaakov. The way that this deal is trying to be brokered is not one person for another person. It's two nations brokering a deal. Now, when we deal nation against nation, the rules are very, very different. When it's private citizens and you want to act in self-defense, you have permission. You want to act in self-defense. You don't want to act in self-defense. You want to let your wife's life being taken by someone else. It's up to you. When we have a situation where one nation is combating another nation, the rules of war and the rules of how we conduct war is very, very different. The family of Shechem is a nation. The family of Yaakov is a nation. The nation of the Jewish people against the nation of Shechem. In the moment the Palestinians became a state and they got themselves a governing power, it's not anymore private citizens against private citizens, against a country. We have two countries against each other. One country called Hamas, Gaza, and one country is called the Jewish people. Now, when it comes to fighting a war of nation against nation, the rules is that everyone is responsible for everyone's life. There's no private citizen anymore. We are becoming a collective. You know what America did in order to end World War II? We all know what they did. They didn't sit and they said, we're going to count, we're going to get all the citizens out, and then we're going to just bomb out the soldiers who are there. When they came to Dresden, or when they went to Hiroshima and the Japan, when they threw down those atomic bombs, there was no women and children. There was no private citizen. This is against Japan and this is against Germany, and that was the end of the war. Because in a war, we have to walk away from the private citizen mindset and move into a place of who survives. Nation of Israel survives or nation of Hamas survives. And this whole conversation of look how many people are losing their lives, what happens to this private citizen and that private citizen, we lose our privacy as a citizen, unfortunately, at a time when our nation is at war. The Maharal presents a very powerful teaching here to understand what Shimon and Levi were looking at Shechem. They were looking at Shechem as a collective. This is not a one-man show who decided to get out of control and rape their sister. Shimon and Levi were looking at themselves. We are representing Am Yisrael. We are representing the nation of Israel. our sister, is part of our nation. Shechem represents Gaza, represents Hamas, represents that part of the universe. Nation against nation. There's no more thinking about rules of engagement. Let's get in, try to find that guy Shechem, hang them. Every single member within the Shechem nation was taking part in this offense. I want to go back a second. This is a beautiful halacha taught by the Maharal, and I want you to really understand it because it gives us a certain clarity. Because we get our mind goes into a fog where we start listening to the Western ideology about how to deal with this. And we have this guy, this news anchor asking about how many citizens got killed. And then we have this anchor saying, but the numbers are not matching. And then we have this one asking about innocent civilians, and this one talking about women and children and elders. We have to get away from that conversation. This is the life of the nation of the Jewish people against the life of a murderous society. Who will survive this? Who will survive this? This is the question. Shimon and Levi were dealing with this question. In the moment, Shechem was not anymore a private citizen. He got the entire city to circumcise. It was not anymore a private citizen. It was a city of people against another city of people. And the Yachid, the private citizen, lost his decision-making as a result of that. But I want to bring you here home after this very important learning that you did today, because you learned a lot of foundations here, how to look with the right look at this battle between Israel and the Hamas right now, really understanding what is the Torah view on innocent lives being lost. That we are not happy about that, but that's just the realities of war. In order to understand further what happened that Yaakov is so upset with Shimon and Levi, I want to go back to the Rambam. The Rambam says that Shimon and Levi did the right thing. So according to the Rambam, my question is, why is Yaakov upset with him? And here comes a very powerful teaching. Now, what happened with Shimon and Levi is they did it twice. The first time they do it is against Shechem. And that was in honor of the family, rescuing their sister, noble, for the family, by the family, powerful, act of zealousy, saving their sister, how dear their sister will turn into a harlot. But then it happens a second time. But this time it's against the family. They use their anger against their brother Yosef. Next week, we're going to read about Shimon and Levi wanting to kill their little brother. The same two guys, Shimon and Levi, who in story number one are acting in nobility, zealousy. Suddenly, a Shabbos later, next week's Parsha, Parsha's Vaishlach, we're going to read about Shimon and Levi using their wrath, using their anger against their brother. That doesn't smell good. That doesn't smell good. Now we are dealing already with attitude. Till now, there was a feeling of righteousness. There was a feeling of someone who is out to do the right thing. But suddenly, the same two guys who did something so seemingly noble and right, complicated, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do according to Maimonides. We are dealing here with a real problem of two guys, who they are choosing to act with the same act of zealousy, but this time against their brother Yosef. And this is what Yaakov tells them. Cursed is your anger. Cursed is the use of weaponry. This is Esav. You learned that from Esav, your uncle, to use weapons and to use wrath and anger. That's not okay. I saw it in the story of Shechem, but I really saw it when you did it to your brother Yosef. Now, zealousy is holy. Zealousy can be used in an incredible and a holy way to protect and to guard and to do things, but you have to really be careful. If you have in you that zealous personality, where else is it showing up in your life? We are all upset about what's going on in Gaza. We are all upset about the savagery and the murders and what the Hamas has done to Jewish lives. But it's very, very important to check in with ourselves. Are we losing our heart here? Is that language of zealousy? Is that something that's directed and aimed towards the evil? Or is there a mixture of our own issues and personality traits that come into play when it comes to talk with anger and with hatred and with upsetness? Yaakov knows what happened from Parshas Vaishlach to Parshas Vayechi, the years and years and years of not having his beloved son Yosef next to him came to be as a result of that anger. As a result of that zealot. Yes, it was used originally for a good thing. Yaakov teaches us a powerful teaching about self-examination, and to be in check with yourself about what's going on with your reactions. When are your reactions stem from holy and positive sources? And when do we have some of our personality traits who are leaning towards midod raot, evil inclinations? The Rambam in the laws of Teshuvah says a powerful statement. He says, don't think that Teshuvah is just for sin. Adultery, theft, robbery. He says that is the basic of Teshuvah. He says the real Teshuvah is to return from evil character traits. And he gives example. Easy to anger, hatred, jealousy, scoffery, making fun of people, chasing money, chasing honor, gluttonous. He says those are greater than sin. He said sin is easy to identify. But this evil character trait that some of us are born with, and some of us have nurtured throughout our life, those are sin that's much harder to identify. A human being stands in judgment on Rosh Hashanah not only for what he did. A human being stands in judgment on Rosh Hashanah before Hashem for those things that he wanted to do. Meaning to say, on those deviations in his personality that he has not cultivated, he has not worked through. Now, who can be so clean? Not to steal, okay? The act of stealing shouldn't be done. Not to smoke, not to eat sugar, but not to desire to smoke, or not to desire to eat sugar. Yeah? To fix our character traits. Some of it are we were born with them. So for thousands of years, there was this notion of fake it till you make it. Keep on doing action of good, and then eventually will affect your psyche as well, will affect your behavior as well. Story of Shimon and Levi teaches us how upset Yaakov was with the anger that those kids didn't work through. Is because one of the greatest lessons is not what we did, but how we did it and why we did certain things. We have to work ourselves. This Shabbos is going to be Yutes Kislev, the 19th day of Kislev, and that is called the Rosh Hashanah of Hasidus. The entire Tanya, the Alter Rebbe, taught about this work, the inner work that the Beinoni means the regular person, works through himself, is all about creating a new way of being, meaning to say how a human being can change his inclinations from the inside. And the Alter Rebbe teaches us the great lesson that through meditation, through creating awareness, a person can change his personality. And that becomes the call of service. The Alter Rebbe says, I'm not going to talk to you about what to do. What to do, you don't need me. For this, you have the Torah tells you already how to do things and what to do. I want to teach you how to be, how to change your being. Not to be a human doing, but being a human being. Change your mind, change your heart, work through those inclinations, work through those anger problems that you have, work through the jealousy that you suffer from, work through all the other habits and bad character traits that you have to work with. Study the Tanya. The Tanya is revolutionary. The Tanya is an eye-opener because it's not just works with you about action. It actually teaches you how to change the very character you were born with, how you change the very character that you live day in and day out with. And the change happens through awareness. The change happens through learning, meditation, repetitive thinking, hypnotic suggestion, creating in your mind new neural pathways that changes all your heart desires and heart inclination based on the awarenesses that you have. The story of Shimon and Levi is a complicated story, as we learned today. It's very complex and it's very devastating because it deals with with human lives being lost as a result of the action of one person. We delved in to the deep understanding of the Rambam versus the Ramban, how they are extremely arguing on what exactly was okay or not okay in that story. What all of this lands us, especially when we know what Yaakov's reaction, the father of Shimon and Levi, is the idea of knowing is how much we have to check in with ourselves, especially in times like this when the emotions are high and we have strong expressions of despair, strong expressions of anger, strong expressions of sadness, of hurt, feeling belittled by the world. We have to remember not to allow our negative character traits to come in the way. You have to be clear, stay on course, check in with yourself. Is that fitting and soothing to your neshama, to your soul? Don't let yourself fall into those traps that those videos on TikTok or on Facebook or on YouTube, or on television, those images are trying to trap you and awakening you. All sorts of inclinations that you are trying to subdue for a very long time and work through, they are terrorizing you. This is what terror means. They are terrorizing your emotions. Don't let yourself fall into that space. We have to learn from the story of Shimon and Levi how important it is. Yaakov reminds them how important it is to be in check with yourself. Because if you let that happen, God forbid, can let it happen on Yosef as well, your beloved brother. Could have sat around the table and figured things out with them. Instead of that, you let your anger, your rage take you over. We have to work on ourselves. And my universe is divided right now into two types of people. People who work on themselves and the rest of the world. We have to work on ourselves. We have to work on our emotions. We have to work on our being. We have to become better. Each and every one of us in their own way. Take a good, hard look on your character trait. It's never too late to fix your reactivity, your angers, your jealousies. We got to work on ourselves. Maimonides wants us in the loss of tshuva. He says this is the ultimate tshuva. To do tshuva on an act, on a sin, that's easy tshuva. The hard tshuva is to really work through those issues in a very deep and profound way, cultivating positive, healthy emotions. God Almighty bless us that we should all do that. This is why our soul came to this world. This is correcting that ego and working on this ego. This is the purpose of our being. And when we all collectively unite into this positive engagement of becoming better people, it will influence the entire world, as Maimonides says. Maimonides says in the laws of Tshuva that the whole world stands on a balance. One good deed you do, one good thought, one good act, one good word, you tip the scale for yourself and you bring salvation to yourself and to the whole world. May God bless us. We should be blessed with a happy Yudas Kislev, the Aksila v'chasina tova, the Shana tova, belimud HaChasidus, bedarkei HaChasidus. Be a Shana tova.